Good morning everyone and welcome to another running video. It's Tuesday the 29th of October 2024 and it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I've already been running for about 5k and I'm just continuing my run, and I'm going to talk to you about the Chicago Marathon again. And I'm saying again because I made a video about the Chicago Marathon about a week ago, and there are still some points and some controversy about it which I'd like to at least discuss and raise some points about. Now, I should start by saying I've never run the marathon. I've never worn the high-tech shoes, the magic shoes as I refer to them, and I don't know Ruth Chepngetich at all. I'd never even heard of her until she won this event. What I do know is that I've done a bit of running myself. I'm able to do research, I'm able to take information from a variety of sources, and I'm able to form an opinion and express that opinion. Now, the thing about opinions is everybody's got one, but not everybody's opinion is correct. Here are a set of facts to do with the Chicago Marathon, and then there is my interpretation of those facts, or my opinion about those facts. So let's get into it. Ruth Chepngetich is a runner from Kenya, and she ran the Chicago Marathon, which was conducted on the 19th of October, so 10 days ago, and she crossed the finish line in 2 hours, 9 minutes and 56 seconds, thereby breaking the barrier of 2 hours and 10 minutes, which the experts said would never be broken. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, they also said that about the 4-minute mile. Somebody broke that. So records exist, or barriers exist, and people test them and get to break them. At the end of that race, it was suggested by at least one person at the press conference that maybe there was something untoward about her performance. It was too good to be believed, and the running channel, the YouTube channel Total Running Productions, suggested that she must have been involved in some chemical assistance. Now, at the time, they produced no evidence to support that claim. There were no documents, there were no lab reports, there were no charts, no graphs, no analysis of her samples to substantiate a claim that she had chemical assistance. I don't know whether she did or she didn't. I'm not saying she did. I'm not saying she didn't. I'm saying I don't know. But at the moment, there is no evidence to support a claim that she was chemically assisted in achieving that time. So Total Running Productions released, or at least I saw another video yesterday, the 28th of October, where they're still examining her performance, but they're looking at two other things, and they seem to have dropped the claim about drug assistance or doping. You would think after 10 days that the laboratories would have conducted all the testing they need to conduct, and that if there was a pale pink flag, they would have raised it by now, never mind a red one. So if there were anything in her samples where figures were higher than they ought to be, or lower than they ought to be, or the presence of things that ought not to be there in the most minute quantities, that information would have been made available, that she would have been stripped of any record that she held, that any prize money would have been either withheld or she would have been made to return it, and any points that she collected in regard to international performances and so on would have been stripped from her. But as to my knowledge, those things have not happened. What has happened is Total Running Productions have concentrated on two other aspects of her performance. One aspect being the use of the paces, and the other aspect being the wearing of what I refer to as the magic shoes. Let's look at the question of the paces first of all. And as I said in the previous video, I assume she didn't turn up at the start line and say Chepngetich here and got a name ticked off, and then said, "Oh, by the way, I brought a couple of blokes to run with me." I assume that those paces were approved, and there are strict protocols about what they can and cannot do. She got men to run for her, or run in front of her as paces, because she was trying to break a record that a woman had not achieved. So therefore she needs men who can run faster than that time. And one guy had run at 2 hours 4 minutes, and the other guy had run 2 hours 10 minutes and a few seconds. It was said that they gave her an unfair advantage because they ran in front of her and broke up the air and reduce the buffeting and so on. Yet the footage that was used in the Total Running Productions video, whether it was their own footage or somebody else's, I don't know, but the footage clearly showed it on occasions that the men were running at least her body width apart, so that she could have run in a straight line with him if she wanted to. I didn't see in the footage in their videos any time when they were running directly in front of her, I guess for fear of tripping over her, or her tripping over their feet or clipping her heels or something like that. But as I say, I assume that they ran in accordance with the rules, and the international body that approves this event were happy with their performance. So the bigger issue becomes the issue of these magic or high-tech shoes that are now ubiquitous. They started appearing about 2019, and it's fair to say that every shoe manufacturer, every manufacturer of athletics gear that includes footwear has their own version of the magic shoes, and every elite runner that has a contract or a sponsorship with any sportswear company wears the shoes. They wear them because the companies give them those shoes to wear, so they'll record a good time, so that you and I, ordinary runners, will think, well, if I get a pair of those shoes, I'll record a good time as well. And in order to get you to part with your money, you have to see other people wearing those shoes and performing well in them. So she didn't do anything that any other elite runner hadn't done by wearing those shoes. It is suggested, however, that women are gaining more advantage from wearing those, what I call magic shoes, than men. And the evidence for that is that since 2019, when these magic shoes started to appear in stores and started to appear on the feet of runners, the times for marathons have been coming down. But the times for women's marathon performances have been coming down by more than the performance for men. Now, that could be a number of factors. It could be that men have perhaps reached the point where there is no more improvement to be gained. That's highly unlikely, because we never know exactly what the human body can do until it's done something. And somebody says the 2-hour barrier will never be broken, then there's somebody out there who says, I'm going to do it, I'm going to break it one day. It may be that women are training harder and that more effort is putting into training women than there was in the past, because we see in all sorts of women's sports, especially in Australia, the various codes of football and cricket, that more money is being spent on women's sports, and women's sports at the elite levels are becoming more successful. So it could be that more women are training harder and are getting better training, and that could account for the improved performance in marathons. It could be that, as in the case of Ruth Chepngetich, that she trains with men who make her train harder in order to keep up with them. That may be the way that Kenyans prepare their runners, and that could be an explanation as well. But there are two suggestions that are put forward that say, that try to explain why women's times are improving more than men's, that seem to make some sense. Number one of those suggestions is that women are lighter than men. Now, these magic shoes, as I call them, or the high-tech shoes, have lots and lots of padding in them in order to provide cushioning between the road and the runner's joints and the knees and the ankles and the lower back and so on. And it's said that because women are lighter than men, when their foot strikes the running surface, be it a road or a pavement or whatever it is, that the compression of the foam in the shoe is not as much as it would be if a man were running, simply because the woman is lighter than the man, or conversely because the man is heavier and therefore is putting more weight on. Now, how does that give the woman a boost in performance? Well, it means that the shoe springs back to its proper form more quickly, and therefore gives the woman a little bit of a boost in the return to its decompressed state, and gives her a little push off for the next step. Now, you might think, well, that's only going to make a difference of a few hundredths of a second, surely. But a few hundredths of a second over 42.6 kilometre race could be reasonably significant. On its own, not the sole explanation, but it could be reasonably significant. The second suggestion that's made is that because women generally are shorter than men and therefore have a shorter stride and therefore have a different cadence to men, that they also gain an advantage from that, in that they take more steps and they spend more time with their foot on the ground and therefore getting a bigger boost each time they lift their foot off the ground. Now, those two things seem to make sense, but they haven't been definitively proven, and I don't know if there's a way to prove them. They're just put forward as a suggestion. But so, let's think about those two things together. Again, the cadence thing might only make a difference of a couple of hundredths of a second per step, times how many steps you make in a 42.6 kilometre race, plus adding on the difference that is made by the shoe decompressing more quickly because it hasn't compressed it as fully from the woman, and those two things might make some difference. Now, in the previous video, I also talked about a woman who was a biomechanist or mechanic who had done a biomechanical assessment of Ruth Chepngetij's running style. And she had analysed how she had changed her style between the Chicago Marathon of 2023 and the Chicago Marathon of 2024, and also the London Marathon, which was run earlier in 2024. And she had noted that significant changes in Chepngetich's performance, which she said if you took all those factors into account, they would account for the improvement in her performance. She said that she was unable to make any judgment about whether or not Ruth Chepngetich had taken a substance or had doped or anything, because she wasn't able to make that assessment just looking at how she was running and looking at her body. She wasn't able to make that assessment, so she didn't rule it in or rule it out, but she did say, looking at the way that Chepngetich had changed her running style, what she did with her head, where her legs were, the lower leg was in relation to her foot and her knee, and the various things that she analysed, she said it was possible when you put all those factors together to say that it was possible that accounted for the improvement in her performance. Now let's look at the totality of things here. There's a biomechanical change in the way she runs. There is the suggestion that wearing these high-tech shoes gives women more of an advantage than it gives a man. There is the suggestion that wearing, in terms of the compression and decompression of the shoe, there is the suggestion that the cadence of women in these when running, and especially when wearing these high-tech shoes, gives a woman an advantage that is greater than the advantage that accrues to a man. So perhaps if we put all those three factors together and then say that on top of all that, she just happened to have one of those days when everything went right for her. Now, you think about yourself and your own running performances, whether you're running a park run or a 10K or a half marathon or something, there will be one day when you go out to run and everything just seems to fall into place. You slept well the night before, you ate well, you fueled up properly the night before, and you fueled up before the race, and you even fueled up properly during the race. You hydrated well, you had plenty of fluids before the race, and you had sufficient fluids during the race. On the day of the race, the conditions were just perfect, nice and still, or the gentle breeze that was always behind you, helping you to cool you, but not impeding your performance. It was neither too hot nor too cold. The humidity was just fine. The course was nice and flat, and you just got out on the course and you got into your rhythm quickly, and you felt really good out there, and there was somebody just in front of you that you were trying to keep close to and perhaps using as a pacer, and everything fell into place. And at the end of the event, it turned out you'd recorded a PB. Now, the next week you went back and you did exactly the same things. You did everything the same as you'd done the week before, but for some reason you didn't record a PB, and it may have been because that day the weather was a bit hotter, the wind was a bit stronger, there was more humidity, you hadn't had as good a sleep, you hadn't had exactly the right amount of food the night before and the morning before, you hadn't drunk enough fluid beforehand, or maybe you ran for a little while and then you pronated too much and your ankle felt uncomfortable, or you felt a twinge in your hamstring or in your groin, or somewhere something happened and you just didn't feel everything was going as well as it was the week before, and you didn't record a PB. Let's give Chepngetich until we have actual evidence. In other words, we have lab results, we have documents, we have charts, we have graphs, we have things that prove that she took a substance. Until we have that, let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say that performance that she did was an actual performance, that she's worthy of what she's done, and let the record stand. If it turns out she's a cheat, then let's expose her, and she'll be exposed and shamed because of it. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed the commentary, and if not, if you enjoyed the scenery, and I'll talk to you in the next video.